you spoke about how diving helped you, um, you know, in certain technical ways for bobsled. Can you identify some of the most valuable experiences from your diving career that are directly applicable to some of your experiences so far in bobsled and helping you go through that transition? I think it's really cool to be able to almost the map how a particular experience can actually have future benefit, and why certain experiences are so useful going forward, even if it's in a completely different domain. So is there anything that comes to mind, or is there a direct link from anything in the diving experience?
Yeah, I can't think of a lot off the top of my head, but one of the big ones that I could identify would be, missing out on the Olympics. Like that whole competition in Qatar where we were world champs, just at the big moment, this moment that we'd been training for, I mean, my whole life, but especially the last 2 years of my diving career was like a culmination. And I then knew what that felt like, what it felt like to miss out. And so for me, going into bobsled, I thought, well, okay, I've learned something really valuable. I've learned that, I can bounce back from these things, that there's always more opportunity. And just that I just feel like I learned something about myself in terms of, how those processes go. So for going into bobsled, it was using that being aware of my resilience was a big thing. And like, okay, if I can go through that, I can go through, a tough learning process where I might encounter the same massive challenges, and have more experience in going through those and overcoming them.
That is something actually that I recognized that diving really gave me was fear. I'm gonna say management. Like it doesn't eradicate fear, but I just had this belief and this understanding that even when I'm shitting my pants and I'm like not looking forward to something, through diving, I just felt like I can just do it. I'll do it anyway, and it might not be perfect, but I'll come out alive. And I feel like it's diving is like the perfect analogy for so many things, a leap of faith, or, just jump and then afterwards everything becomes easy, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually kind of true. And so, if I think about maybe public speaking things or anything that I've been particularly nervous for, even if the fear feels huge, like unreasonably big, I still felt like, yeah, but you can just do it and take the step. And I guess bobsled is also similar in that sense. Like it's a fear-based sport, right? But were there things that you had to unlearn from diving into bobsled? Are there things that have kind of gotten in the way of your bobsled progress?
I mean, yeah, as far as the technique and stuff, there's been a lot of things I had to unlearn. Like pointing my toes. Like, and just be straight honest with you. If anybody knows a thing about sprinting, you're not supposed to point your toes. You're supposed to keep your feet as flexed as possible so that you can rebound off the ground. And my coach is like, well, you run pretty good for a diver. And I thought that's probably the biggest insult that an athlete in a track-based sport can get.
I'm so sorry, but that just reminded me, because I used to get so much like stick and abuse from my friends in school because I used to kick a football with a pointed foot.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Like, what are you doing, man? It's like, I don't know, it's just what I do, I just point those toes.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, I mean, that's like a bunch of funny, quirky things like that I had to do, obviously technically and training. But I'd say the major difference is kind of an understanding of the power output. Like the big thing I had to undo from diving was that in diving, I was always trying to control my strength. You're always trying to control and channel your strength to the right areas, the right muscles at the right time to make it look elegant, and that's where I think a lot of people I've kind of thought recently think that diving is easy is because it doesn't look physically draining to do. But the reason it doesn't look that way is because we're trying to make it look easy, right? Whereas bobsled is literally the opposite. Like you're just trying to be a monster. Like you get out there, you get all your strength, all your speed. Guys are banging their heads and jumping and like just monstrous. You'll hear yelling, screaming. They get on the line, the bell tolls to like, say the track is clear, and then you're just pushing as hard as you can, like 100% effort physically, and not much going on mentally. It's just the complete opposite of diving, and obviously that's not in every training rep, but in a race it's like that. You clear your head and you just channel this kind of strength and speed that you kind of have to dig really deep for.
So it's so interesting. It's so interesting because it's just such an alien concept, and I feel like I would really struggle to break down those traits and really just absolutely push. But also what you said is almost like an analogy into how you're actually now approaching this pursuit of the Olympics. You've cleared everything. It's become a bit more streamlined. Like, yes, there's a bit of fluctuation in terms of how you're living, but there is this consistency where it's a very channeled focus, and it's just pure 100% energy into this goal. And I actually didn't expect your answer about the most valuable experience. I didn't expect you to kind of tag Doha, and also in the way as missing out, because we did extremely well to I think get even that close. But I can understand how that feeling can now be transferred into this and how that's beneficial. But you've put your medical career on hold for this pursuit. You're traveling around Europe. It's mentally taxing. It's financially taxing. But why is this pursuit of the Olympics so valuable to you? What is it about the Olympics that is so valuable to you to put all your energy into it?
I feel like I had never, like, always counted myself out for the Olympics as an option as a kid. Like, I just was in an environment where I, for whatever factors, came from my training as a child, that I didn't really believe that was what I wanted. And, it's quite opposite to a lot of kids who, if you talk to them nowadays, and, when I was a kid, they were like, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics. I would have said like, yeah, that'd be cool. But like, it wasn't the driving force of my life. And that's something that has clearly changed, right? And I think that it took a long time for me to build up the kind of confidence and self-belief to say that, well, of course it'd be cool that I could do it. So the issue wasn't that I didn't want to do it. The issue was that I never believed it was possible. And so through, training with you, like you said, like we never thought we'd get that. Not that we never thought, I never thought before that I could get that close. And going to Scotland to train with you was a chance to unlock this potential that I wasn't sure was there. And throughout it, I started to see it. I think we saw it, like you said, even in the first week of my first trip there, a year before I moved there, we just saw something that was like, okay, this is possible, And when you start, for me, that was kind of like the wake up call to say like, look, I have the option. Do I want to do it? And I was like, I fully committed myself to that. And it's the same thing now, with bobsleigh. It's like I tried it out. I wasn't sure. And I've now set everything that I can towards it, because it's the concept of doing something big. For some people, it's like, yeah, I want to stand atop the world. But for me, I want to do something I thought I could never do before. I mean, how cool does that sound to, like, thinking that you spent your whole life thinking that something wasn't possible, and that suddenly that thing becomes an option? No wonder you're like, no doubt you're going to go for it. That's how it was for me, I believe.
I resonate a lot with that, actually, but I also really like the way you framed that. I feel like you frame it more positively than me, because I never believed that I would make it to the Olympics. But it was my dream, it was my goal. But because I didn't believe it, I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have a poster on my wall of like a picture of me with a Olympic gold medal around my neck or something. And whereas, for example, Tom Daley, Matty Lee, I'm pretty sure to say that both of those guys did something similar. But I just never really had that belief. And I started to feel like, therefore, it was me trying to, what gave me my kind of relentless energy to keep pursuing that, and ultimately actually making this thing that I didn't believe was possible, which is still insane to me. But I wondered if it was that trying to maybe like, prove to myself that I could do it is what gave me that like insane level of energy, let's say, of motivation. But I think overall in my head, it felt a bit more negative. Whereas the way you're framing it sounds like, I don't believe this is possible, but like, whoa, how sick would it be if I could? Is that right? Or has that been something that's like also weighed on you? Or
It definitely has weighed on me before. But I feel like what I've done especially well, I think in the last year of my diving career up until now, is find a way of, like you said, essentially turning that around without directly turning it around. Like it was more of just a daily mindset, like something that I applied to myself, that I said, okay, like the closer you get to something like that, the more real it starts to feel, and I'll tell you, when we were in Qatar, it felt real. Like it felt like it's at our fingers grasp here, and that was the beauty of that part. I don't want to make that my experience at last world champs with diving sound negative, but it was, because in reality, it was like this chance. It was this chance to do something big, and you have to, like I've said about taking open doors, you have to jump at these chances. And like you said about like the, taking the leap, like just going after it, like that diving teaches you how to do. It was that thing exactly. And now I'm doing the same thing in a different sport, where I'm kind of taking that leap because I figure you just got to try. And I decided, like, that was probably one of the big mindset switches for me post diving career, was that switch of, okay, I'm not going to try, I'm going to do it. And I didn't necessarily believe that at the start, but I kept telling myself that at the start. Like, if I'm in this for real, and there's no point in wasting my time, putting in less effort than I could, or, trying to manage 100 different life paths at one time. Like, I have this chance to do one thing that would be big for my country, for my identity, for all the people who supported me along the way. And that older version of myself would say, you'd be crazy not to try it. And if I'm going to try it, I got to go all out on it. So that's kind of where it all ties together, I think, as far as how my mindset had changed from that past person who was maybe more timid or scared, or, just accepting of being, taking the easy path, which, would be not going on this crazy adventure,
Really cool. I had one of my coaches, he always used to say, to try is to fail. But I think I've said this to Yona before, it used to annoy me. I used to be like, what do you mean? You just say that, and I'd probably come up with more excuses, and you'd like, to try to fail. Like, are you going to do it or not? And it's like, well, yeah, I'm going to do it, but like, what if I don't do it? Like, I don't, we're talking about something really difficult. So, and I kind of overthought that, but I think that's so cool. And again, maybe now at a similar place to you, now I've got a bit more maturity. I actually understand the value of what he was saying to me then, that to try is to fail. And, I kind of wish that I could have understood that more at the time. But it sounds like, with a bit more maturity and stuff now, and all those experiences behind you, you're in a really powerful mindset. But just to embarrass, I just wanted to embarrass Yona, actually. But what you said a really nice bit about, him kind of a bit of that mentorship and that belief that he gave you, and suddenly partnering with Yona suddenly made it feel like this was more tangible. But so what? I was about to say wisdom. What? That was completely accidental. Let's say it anyway.
Dear,
what wisdom? What wisdom did, or values did Yona kind of impart on you in particular during that period of time where you guys worked together?
Yeah, we had a conversation about this too the other day. I was telling him how I had kind of started to see myself doing things that Yona had kind of done as far as patterns, and I was like, dang. I switched over to inside.
I finally cracked it.
Yeah, because we were like, a few years apart, and he had a longer career than I had at that point, and I was like, seeing him kind of do things that were all very efficient based. The thought of what he could be doing more never left his mind. Whereas for me, I wanted to just relax and like, do chill things. I wanted to eat junk food more, things like that, little things. And, I'm not saying that I don't eat junk food anymore, but I am saying that I've definitely tightened up on how those things impact my performance in the long term, and how every little thing kind of adds up. So a lot of things about his lifestyle that I realized, I knew from the start that they were things that he had tailored to form this kind of high performance lifestyle he had, that I felt like I couldn't keep up. Like I couldn't have showed up in Scotland to move in with him and done the exact same thing right away. I probably would have gone crazy. But, over years, I can start to kind of appreciate those things and notice how they've kind of impacted me in a way, right? And he asked me, well, because I was training all summer, my first summer in the sport post-season and in bobsleigh, and he's like, well, what else do you do? I said nothing. And I'm genuinely being honest, I didn't really do anything else. I of course saw friends, and I enjoyed the weather, but like every day it was like, okay, I'm done training. I need to be ready for tomorrow. I'm going to go home. I'm going to do my recovery. I'm going to fuel, all these steps, because if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be able to get that edge and be kind of, at the level that I'm trying to be at, which I'm still fighting for, of course.
Honestly, like it makes me like somewhat emotional. I'm not an emotional person, like hearing all that, and it makes me feel very proud of where you're at and what you've done right now, because of the impact that I've been able to have. But quite frankly, as you said, it's hard. It would have been hard to come into Edinburgh and try and replicate what I did. That was impossible. But from my perspective, it was frustrating, because I was like, all these things, I can see so many things so clearly as to what could be done better, but it would never work to really try and force that on someone, because that would have not been beneficial to the development process, and that's not how development worked. So my approach was kind of set the standard, and incrementally you kind of come towards that. And by the end of it, it was almost so on point that we didn't have to communicate that much. And I've retained the fact that I reckon if we had 2 more years, if we're in at the start of the cycle, by the end of a whole cycle, we would have been even closer, if not within that, because I could see that process, and I could see the improvement, I could see the meaning, and that became so clear after Doha. And so, I mean, to be honest, what I saw before Doha was that fear, was that nervousness of that is there and it's real, and like maybe that little bit of lack of belief, because as you say, you maybe didn't believe in yourself as much as you could have done or should have done beforehand. But that can't be forced, it can't be rushed. And I'm so happy that that wasn't the end point for you. Like, that wasn't the negative, disappointing end. It was just a stepping stone onto the next thing. You've been able to transition that into bobsled. Now, I think that's so exciting, because now that's when it all really comes out. And now that's when all those lessons and all those experiences can become so valuable. So, I mean, I don't even have a question. I'm just simply excited to see, what happens in this period.
I have a question.
Go on.
Based on that.
Thank God that we have this duo, right? Because that would have been the end of the episode. I have no more questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I actually was curious why you said that you knew after whatever happened in 2024, you were going to retire from diving. And why did you know that?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'd felt that obviously I had this pressure of wanting to pursue my goals in med school. And that was something major that when I kind of, in my mind signed the contract, okay, I'm gonna go through with this. I'm gonna give it all I got, but I'm gonna give it 2 years because that's when the Olympics is. And, I'll go for there. I never completely shut out the option of continuing diving past the Olympics, but in my mind, it didn't make a lot of sense considering that I did and still do really want to go to school. And I feel that if I had prolonged another 4 years past that at the time, at least, it was going to be hard on me to be away from kind of this passion that I have. So that was probably the major factor. And also and this was part of kind of the confusion and kind of fear that Yona was talking about in the lead up to Doha, was that I also started feeling burnt out, and it wasn't much mental as much as it was also with diving itself. Like I went to the pool and I'd bring everything I had, and I just felt like I was slowly going like this. And it was a dip, of course, and that's something that all athletes experience and are well acquainted with. But the timing was so unfortunate for me that I couldn't quite fight getting out of it. I never really saw the uptick. So I was like, okay, well, at this point, I feel like I'm just holding on. I'm not really performing. I'm just holding on to get through. But I have this goal. And I never let up on that. Like until after the event in Doha, I said, okay, this sucks. This is how my diving is going, but I've got to fight. And, the fact that we were, like Yona said, able to pull off and get that close in spite of what, in my mind, was a major dip in my performance, it's amazing, really. And it's like hard to think about it because I remember the feeling, just the weight. And it's weird with diving, like it's not something that I can even really describe. It was just like I would go up, do the dives and training I had to do that day, say 2 months out of the qualifying event, and just things weren't sharp. No matter how hard I tried, and I tried everything. I changed my diet. I changed my sleep. I talked to people. I did so much that I could to try and get the feeling of my dives back to a point that felt like it was consistent and I could just trust it. But I never quite got there. And diving got hard. Like it was physically harder for me to do my dives. And it didn't make sense why. But at the end, like in Doha, you get that competition adrenaline, you get that obviously hype around it, and you give it your best. You can't slow down from that. You have to do it. It's the moment that you had been waiting for, regardless of your condition. So that was a big part of it for sure.
It's sometimes also nice to have that clarity, and I'm actually grateful that you stopped, because if you didn't stop and continued, I might have felt that I needed to continue as well, and I didn't want to continue because I actually honestly got to Paris and felt a very similar thing whilst I was there. I went to the pool, did my dives, but the only reason I was able to do that is because I had the Olympic competition there. Otherwise, I physically I was and mentally I was kind of just done with it. And once I did my final dive and I knew that my campaign was over, I was so fine with not having to dive anymore. So I completely understand that feeling. It's a really tough thing, but it quite often happens around those moments. But I think one of the greatest things that you've been able to do is do so many things outside of diving already, and outside of bobsled. I guess that means that when that transition does come, it's easy because you're ready, and you've extended it out of your choice, which means that you're more likely to enjoy it because it's in your control. But eventually that transition will come, and eventually life beyond sport will start. What are the kind of key lessons, I guess, in terms of excellence? Because if you go into what you want to go into, which is medicine, whatever, you have to be excellent. You have to do things extremely well because lives literally depend on it. What are the kind of key lessons that you can take from sport in terms of being excellent in that it will then be able to apply? Is that something that you already think about now?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it like intermittently, and every time there's another reason in my mind, like of how sport really does like benefit me for my future career or in other careers that I've worked in as well. I mean, and it's all values based, right? Like it's like the discipline it takes to train is the same discipline that it takes to study. The the teamwork it takes to work well in a synchro team or with a whole club is the same teamwork that it takes to function well in a hospital where you have a team of coworkers that are working together to help improve people's health and their lives in general, right? Like that's just two of the big ones, but I can think of 100 that just really do play well into not only medicine, but kind of any career that comes next. So that's why, like I said, my main goal is to become a doctor. But I generally just have a passion for the sciences and for helping people. So that precludes me to anything in healthcare, in my opinion. I'm still open. I'm still exploring things. I would consider sports psychology or being a sports medical doctor as well, or optometry or any of those things, because I feel like they would be the most fulfilling for me. But I have this confidence from sport that no matter where I end up, that those skills are going to transfer directly. And that's a huge thing that I've said and every time I make an application as well, because it is huge, the amount of benefits that you get as an athlete, like just from learning and going through hard times. And, it's really a privilege to be under that pressure because it prepares you for so many life experiences that come next, not even in work, but like, in relationships and everything else that life really is. It's quite amazing.
I think I read that you say few things are as fulfilling to me as the connection I share with others. Is that true?
Absolutely. I mean, I look back, I'm quite a nostalgic person. Like I like just sometimes just sitting back and thinking about good times or going and looking at, photos or listening to music that reminds me of a certain period of time that I'd gone through, good and bad, and just reflecting on those times and considering how you're kind of like, there's a piece of you that, you get from everyone that you've ever met and the things that you've learned and experienced. I think that's really a value because again, when I look back, like, sure, I can think of the results or how I did this dive at an event or something like that. But what really comes out of it and what seems the most valuable, and I'm sure piques most people's interest, example of like what Yona and I's relationship was like, how we helped each other, how we overcame certain things. And like that connection is what really matters to me at the end of the day. I think if you asked your older version of yourself at the end of the day, what really mattered? Well, like, of course, performance matters. It matters at the end of the day. But the most valuable thing, the most fond memories are most likely going to be the people you were around and those relationships that you made and experienced, I guess. That's an opinion. I know everyone probably doesn't feel that way, but I wouldn't be surprised if a great share of people feel the same.
I think the more people that feel that way, the better. There's probably not enough people that tend to feel that way, but that's I think the whole reason behind talking about what we are trying to talk about on this podcast is just to try and spread that kind of message even more. And I think that's a beautiful message to wrap on. I think it's really profound and something that people can hopefully take a lot from. So, Yohan, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. I simply wish you absolutely all the best. I'm fully behind you. Super proud of what you're doing, and I can't wait to watch the next month or so. But I got my fingers crossed. I've got all my energy behind you, and yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking today and really cool to kind of see how you guys, process like my life experience and hear it reflected back in the ways that we relate. I think that's always a cool opportunity to connect.
Where can the people find you? Where can the people support you on your journey?
Mostly on Instagram, yohan.esk, and I'll be posting there, somewhat consistently. And with the race weeks, I'll be going to Norway next week for the World Cup, and then after that to Latvia, Christmas break, and then I'll be having 3 more World Cups in January to wrap up the season, and then we'll see where I land as far as making the Olympics after that.
Let's go. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Okay, amazing. Yeah, and first from my side, Yohan, thank you so much, man. It's been a real pleasure, and it was so cool, actually. Yeah, I think it was nice of you just say right at the end about how it's been interesting for you to see how we've reflected your story back onto you. And yeah, so that's part of the whole fun of this, and giving athletes an opportunity to tell their stories and to also and see what happens when you start to share it, because we carry all this stuff in our heads most of the time, and that's kind of difficult. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been awesome. That is where we will end this episode. So yeah, once again, Yohan, thank you. He is going to stay around for one more dive on our Patreon. So if you're not there yet, the link is in the show notes, and we'll see you there. Ciao.